Right, hello and welcome to the Raw Review, the show where I talk about and review what happened this week on Monday Night Raw. If you are new here, which all of you watching this video will be, make sure to go down below and drop a subscribe so you don't miss out on daily wrestling content. Let's get into it. So Raw this week would open, as announced, with CM Punk. The show would open with Punk backstage, where he'd embrace Sami and Jay following on from their War Games victory before making his way to the ring. Now, after Punk did make his way to the ring, he went on to cut a promo talking about his future and alluding towards WrestleMania being that future. That's what he's looking towards. Now, who's going to interrupt this promo? You guessed it. Seth Rollins. Now, when Seth Rollins did interrupt this promo, he came down to the ring and they kind of had this back and forth staring contest for what felt like an eternity. In reality, it was only like a couple of minutes. But staring at each other from opposing corners, kind of maybe foreshadowing something to come. And that's when Seth Rollins says, I should have took you out a year ago when you returned 1 year ago. I should have knocked you out then. And I didn't. And after seeing you stand tall this past weekend with Roman Reigns, it's made me realise I need to rectify that situation. And CM Punk responded and said, look, I'm looking towards my future, and it doesn't involve you, mate, so stay out my business. This then, of course, leads to Seth Rollins pushing over CM Punk, a brawl breaking out, as it does. It's WWE, what do you expect? For the brawl to then be broken up by none other than Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. Now, each man kind of takes care of one of them. Jay gets CM Punk, Sami gets Seth Rollins, and as Jay is leading out CM Punk, Seth decides to take a little jab at Jay, questioning why Jay went back to team with Roman Reigns, which is when Sami nobly steps up and defends Jay, saying, you don't get to speak to Jay like that, which is when Seth actually does a complete 180 and says, you know what, you're right, they're family, I take it back, but why did you team with Roman, Sami? And this is when Sami defends his decision and says, look, I didn't want to team with Roman Reigns. I know what a monster he's become. But let's not forget that you made him that monster. And this is where Seth, after this, starts to draw parallels between what he did to Roman 10 years ago and what Sami did not too long ago. Saying, if you want to talk about me making Roman a monster, take a look in the mirror, because you did the exact same thing that I did. And this would then set up a match for the main event of the evening, Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins. Now, honestly, this was a great opening segment. I mean, it perfectly sets up the feud for Seth versus CM Punk, as well as now creating a bit of tension between Seth and Jay, Seth and Sami, and maybe we'll see more of that tension come to rise as the night goes on. Now, after this, we would cut to a backstage segment with the Judgment Day, where Liv would approach Finn and say, why did you attack Damien at Survivor Series? I thought we agreed to leave Damien alone. And then this is where, again, what we've been seeing the past few weeks with Finn's ego hitting the roof says, look, I did what had to be done. I did what was needed. And maybe if you all started listening to me, maybe last week at Survivor Series, you and Raquel's team would have actually won War Games. And then this obviously shows the tension that is building between the Judgment Day. I love it, man. This is going to implode, and it's going to be great when it does. Liv then asks Dom to go and, watch Finn while she prepares for a match, which would be coming up next. Now, as just mentioned, Liv and Raquel would go out to face Io Sky and Kairi Sane in what would actually turn out to be quite a competitive back and forth match. Didn't last too long and inevitably ended with Raquel Rodriguez picking up a clean pinfall win on Kairi Sane in the middle of the ring. So, fair play. I didn't really see that coming, but to each their own. Now, after the match, Liv and Raquel would continue the beatdown on Kairi Sane, only for Rhea Bloody Ripley to make the save, as you'd expect. Liv, obviously, as we've seen the past few weeks, fleed the ring to the outside, which would allow Rhea and Raquel to brawl, which inevitably would end up on the outside, where Liv and Raquel would take advantage of the numbers game and just overpower Rhea and send her eye first into the announce table. They're really playing on this eye injury, so fair enough. Honestly, like I said, it was a fairly decent match, and then Rhea making the save on Kairi and Io, and it furthers the feud between her and Liv. I know a lot of people are getting bored of it. I'm kind of on the fence. It's alright, but there was nothing wrong with this segment, nothing wrong with the match. It was fine. After this, we would see some more Judgment Day on Raw, as Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio would go and interrupt Gunther's backstage interview. Now, Finn Balor would say to Gunther, look, I've helped you beat Damian Priest the last 2 times that you've beat him. I think it's about time that I deserve a title shot. Now, Gunther dismisses this instantly and says, look, I didn't want your help and I didn't need your help. And quite frankly, you've never beat Damian Priest yourself, but your boy Dominic Mysterio here has. Now, honestly, this was a great way for Gunther to humble Finn, because as we've seen the past few weeks with Finn's ego, as I've mentioned, becoming out of control, we know as viewers, we can see that and say, yeah, Gunther's humbled him a bit there, but we know that Finn Balor's not going to take it humbly. We know he's going to take it bitterly, and maybe, just maybe, it'll affect things later to come in the show. Following on from this, we had the Women's Intercontinental Tournament opening bracket, where we seen Shayna Baszler face Katana Chase and Dakota Kai. Now, this match kind of felt like a way just to display how good Katana Chase is, and she's actually very, very decent, so fair play. I mean, all 3 women got the spots off, and like I said, it was quite a good competitive match, with Dakota Kai ultimately picking up the win and advancing in the tournament. Now, like I said, overall, it was a very solid match. It was nothing special by any means. It's not going to be memorable for years to come, but by no means was it bad at all. Like I said, a very solid match. And this is where we come to one of the major talking points of the night, the New Day 10-year anniversary. This had opened with a video package displaying all their great achievements over the last 10 years as a team, as solos, competitors. And after this package, we would see Adam Pearce standing in the ring to introduce the New Day. Now, the ring and the entrance ramp were decorated to high heaven with New Day memorabilia. So when the New Day walked out, it was like they were quite literally walking down memory lane. That was quite a cool visual and something I really liked. Now, when the New Day came out, they both opened Xavier and Kofi by saying, you know, look, this is something great. We've achieved a lot of stuff, more than either of us could have ever dreamed of in our wildest imaginations, and that how thankful they are for the fans for making it happen, essentially. So that was a really nice touch to see, and things would go downhill very quickly after that, because the fans would then start chanting for Big E, where Xavier and Kofi would acknowledge, yeah, Big E's not here. But they would also say they have an announcement to make, and it was not the fans' fault. Now, this seems to be building towards them pairs splitting up, but that's when Big E's music hits. Out he comes, the injured Big E returns and interrupts the New Day, and he says, you know, I wish I was here under better circumstances, but seeing you two go back and forth the last few weeks has upset him, which, again, in story it would. You'd expect it to. And during this great promo from Big E, he says, look, we've built something incredible that matters to a lot of people over the last 10 years, and I'm not going to let you two split it up. So I'll be here every single week, week after week after week after week after week on Raw to manage you and make sure that, you know, we're getting it done. Now, after saying this, you're expecting, you know, the New Day to embrace, oh my God, they're back together, but instead, Xavier and Kofi massively criticise Big E and say, well, you've only came back because we're at breaking point. You know, you had a new life that you chose over us, and ultimately you chose yourself over us. They even comment on his broken neck and compare him to other wrestlers that have had broken necks who've came back quicker. And I was like, well, you haven't even had surgery and you're still not back. It was, honestly, it was brutal to watch, but it was so well executed that fair play. Now, this is where they kind of make an announcement. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We don't really know. This whole mystique around Big E's injury has been going on for a while now, where we don't know if he'll ever be medically cleared. But that is when Xavier and Kofi say, look, E, let's not lie to the fans. You know you'll never be medically cleared. So how about you go and crawl back to the desk where you actually belong? And this is where Big E tries to embrace Kofi Kingston, and Kofi just puts his hand out and rejects it. And it's such a great shot with Xavier Woods looking down to the ground, Kofi rejecting Big E's hug, and Big E shouting, they're like, is this it? Is this what it's all about? Is it over now? After everything we've built, we're done. Yeah, it's such a great visual. For a team that's been established in WWE for 10 years, to have it end like this was phenomenal. Now, ultimately, Big E would leave the ring, where Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods would face off in the middle, and ultimately shake hands and say, it's just us now. Now, honestly, this segment was phenomenal. absolutely, undoubtedly, segment of the night. And a perfect way to kind of separate the New Day from Big E, because ever since Big E's injury, obviously everyone's been questioning, when's he going to come back, when's he going to come back, and it's been kind of hard for Xavier and Kofi to go on without him when there's so many questions around him. So, like I said, I'm happy considering all the unknowns around Big E's injury that they've just separated them now. You got Xavier and Kofi as a New Day, and you'll have Big E, who's, you know, he's doing the pre-shows, he's doing whatever, and maybe one day he'll come back, but we know for certain it's not going to be anytime soon. So, again, great segment and builds the perfect little future for the New Day. We then seen a Karrion Kross promo after this, where he talks about what happened last week on Monday Night Raw and talks about the Wyatt Six making it personal when they went after Scarlett. He also makes a nice little comment about they started this fire. Now, this would end up leading towards an 8-man tag being announced for next week, so I'm really looking forward to that. And it was a decent little promo from Kross. He's genuinely very underrated. Now we would have even more Judgment Day on Monday Night Raw, which you can't complain at. Dominic Mysterio would face off against Gunther in a non-title match. Now, to be honest, Dom started off strong, getting off a surprising amount of offense before going into the ad break. And then when we came back, Gunther had kind of turned the tide a bit and things seemed to be going like Gunther was about to finish it. And then bang! Low blow from Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio then offloads a flurry of offense. I mean, he hit a 619 to the body, a 619 to Gunther's face, and then a frog splash. I thought Dominic was about to pin Gunther clean, honestly. And then Gunther does what Gunther does best. Massive powerbomb. 1, 2, 3. This was when we'd see Finn Balor come out, as we could all anticipate, and attack Gunther after the match. Now, Finn would tell Dom to watch and learn, and he'd hit 3 coup de grace on Gunther and say, that's how it's done, to Dominic, while Dominic was still slumped in the corner. So this just further shows how big of an ego Finn Balor has, and look, we've all been anticipating in the last few weeks, this is going to be the undoing to the Judgment Day, the fact that Finn can't keep his ego in check. Following on from current Judgment Day to a former Judgment Day, we would go backstage where we'd have Pete Dunne talking about former Judgment Day member R-Truth. This would be a backstage interview which would very quickly be interrupted by what would sound like a scuffle, where we'd find out Jey Uso had been attacked. Now, we are unaware who Jey Uso was attacked by, but maybe we'll find out later on in the night. Now, we would see another match that was advertised for tonight, Pete Dunne versus R-Truth. Now, Dunne would absolutely beat down on R-Truth very early doors, but ultimately, after the fans were chanting Butch at Pete Dunne, he'd get distracted and end up losing to a roll-up to R-Truth. Now, to be honest, I get this is kind of like the comedy thing, it's the comedy segment, and maybe I'm biased because I'm from the exact same place as Pete Dunne, but I just think he deserves better, honestly. What he is capable of, he deserves better than to be losing in a comedy match to R-Truth, and that's no slight against R-Truth, absolute legend, just an up-and-comer like Pete Dunne. Does he really need to be taking 3-minute roll-up losses to R-Truth? I don't know. I'm not a fan of it personally, but I get some people probably are. Now, in another backstage interview, Ludwig Kaiser would interrupt Bron Breakker, where Ludwig would say, you know, fair enough, you won at the weekend, but you didn't beat me, so I want an Intercontinental Championship match against you. Now, Bron would actually accept this and say, yeah, you know what, you can have your match in the future, but he would also say, just make sure that you get yourself out of Gunther's shadow pretty soon, because his stock is dropping. So, again, as far as backstage interviews being interrupted goes, it was decent. There's nothing really to talk about it. Now, in our penultimate backstage segment of the night, Sami Zayn would confront Adam Pearce and ask who attacked Jey. Now, Adam Pearce would admit, I don't know who attacked Jey. Who do you think did it? And this is where Sami puts 2 and 2 together and comes out with 47 and assumes that it was Seth Rollins, as you'd expect. Now, with the who attacked Jey thing, I did think, you know, it's obviously not Seth. I thought it'd be a great way to turn Punk heel if they did want to go that way. Again, I don't think they will, purely for the fact, I mean, you look at CM Punk, you look at the eyes that he brings in as a face, surely you're not going to want to take that away and make him a heel. So I doubt it's going to be Punk. At this point, I was thinking it was just going to be a member of the New Bloodline, you know, having that feud carry on. But maybe it wasn't, and maybe it was someone else that we'd see later on. And in the final backstage segment, Finn Balor would confront Adam Pearce, where it would be announced that at Saturday night's main event, Finn Balor would be taking on Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, I am really looking forward to this match. I think it is going to be a great match, but I'm guessing that there is definitely going to be some shenanigans in the match, so we'll come to that when we have to. And it was now time for the main event of the evening, Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn. Now, these two put on an absolutely great match, as is just the standard for them two. And at one point outside the ring, you know, Seth is trying to plead with Sami Zayn to use his head and understand what's going on and stop being an idiot, basically. Look what we've seen in the opening promos. Look what led to this match. And this is when Sami slaps Seth and says, look, admit you attacked Jay. I know what you did. Seth responds by slamming Sami into two of the ring posts. Absolutely brutal bump took from Sami, so fair play to him. Now, following on from this, Sami would grab a steel chair, take it into the ring, and threaten Seth Rollins with it to try and, intimidate him into confessing to attacking Jay. And this is where Seth says, it wasn't me. Have you asked your good friend Punk, though? Now, Sami, obviously realising it wasn't Seth, turns, throws the chair out the ring, and when he turns around, gets rolled up, small package, 1, 2, 3, Seth wins. And this is once again where Seth says to Sami, look, you're a good guy, but you need to start using your head. You need to stop being stupid. Now, as Seth is walking up the ramp, we're still focused on Sami Zayn. And at this point, I thought, okay, this is where Raw ends. And then, bang, he turns around. Drew McIntyre is back. Claymore to Sami Zayn, with Drew standing in the middle of the ring. So now it can be assumed that not only has Drew attacked Sami, but he was also the one who attacked Jay earlier in the night. Now, Drew versus Sami would be a feud I would definitely be interested in seeing. I mean, they're both phenomenal athletes and great wrestlers, so they'd put on some great matches, I am sure. But that was the end of Monday Night Raw. Now, overall, I think the episode was absolutely great. A really unexpected, phenomenal episode of Raw. Like, don't get me wrong, there was probably things that you could add in that would have made it better, but by no means was anything on this week's episode bad. Like, everything was solid. Every segment, every promo, every match, there was no real bad things. So, genuinely, maybe I'm a bit biased considering it is my first Raw review, but this week's episode of Raw is going to get a solid 9 out of 10. But if you agree or disagree with me, you can go ahead down below and let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel as well. That is going to wrap things up for today's video, though. I will see you tomorrow with a brand new wrestling video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.